On this edition of Southern Newsweek, new plans are unveiled for Dunedin's main street. Protesters leave Dunedin's Octagon after 8 weeks of camping outdoors. And a Southland farmer is pleased with his cannabis crop. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Hannah Wilkins. The Dunedin City Council has released its revised plans for the planned Central City redevelopment. The George Street retail quarter designs have been unveiled, outlining design strategies, street layouts and changes for the $28 million project.
It's a redevelopment that Dunedin City Council is branding as totally gorgeous, or totally Georgious. In practice, it's a long-delayed and major upgrade of the city's main street, with just over $28 million earmarked to redevelop George Street. There was some opposition to elements of the original plan, but Dunedin City Council Plan Project Director Glen Hazelton claims the move to one-way single-lane traffic is remaining, so the council can stay within budget.
So at this stage we are just doing it fit for the one-way traffic. That's still a consideration for council if they want to change that, but
DCC Chief Executive Sandy Graham says the revised Central City plans have been developed with mana whenua.
I'm extremely proud of the work that has been done and the way that my staff have worked with Ōkaha on behalf of mana whenua to deliver this design, and I'm really confident that when people see it, they will be blown away by it in the same way that I have been.
The council released a series of concept designs and layouts for the multi-million-dollar project today. Glen Hazelton says 3 blocks of George Street will have their own unique themes and styles, with a twist in the way each will be developed.
the opportunity is also with the way we'll lay out the street is you can close off block by block much easier than we can at the moment, and hopefully without the requirement of lots of orange cones and plastic barriers.
Much of the money is actually being spent below ground, replacing old pipes. Above ground, the redevelopment will feature the use of paving stones, along with more shared spaces for pedestrians and cyclists, and references to Dunedin's history and heritage. The council's aiming to have the first block between Moray Place and St Andrews Street finished by September this year. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Anti-mandate protesters in Dunedin's Octagon removed their tents and structures on Monday morning, before a noon deadline to leave the public space. But Mayor Aaron Hawkins says the city's ratepayers will be paying to repair the upper Octagon lawn.
Anti-mandate protesters have been camped out in part of Dunedin's upper Octagon for the past 60 days. Last Thursday, the Dunedin City Council issued the group with a formal warning of trespass, giving them a deadline of noon Monday to move out. This morning they were packing up their tents and equipment, some of which have been in place since early February, as the makeshift occupation came to an end.
I'd like to thank the protesters today for packing up their camp and leaving the Octagon. We were always optimistic that we would be able to get a peaceful resolution to this situation, but we couldn't have done that without their cooperation today.
A few protesters were hostile to media this morning as the group were packing up their final belongings. The mayor admits people are angry, but says the Octagon protesters have been mostly peaceful.
I think aside from the understandable response, I think, to the notice given in writing last week, I think it's hard to characterise it as being an irresponsible gathering.
He's pleased the group left without needing to get the police involved, but Hawkins says ratepayers will be paying the bill to repair the Octagon lawn.
I think it would be overly antagonistic at this point to turn around and try and pass on the cost of fixing the reserve to those who had been protesting here.
A number of people returned to eat lunch in the upper Octagon today, including local office worker Reese, who's hopeful some of the protesters will return to make good.
I think the protesters between them could chip in and come down here and do a little bit of work. Sow some new grass seed or something like that would probably be a good way to go about it.
While some critics have suggested the council should have acted sooner to remove the squatters, the mayor says he believes the DCC acted as soon as it could have, in the context of mandates being lifted. In Dunedin, the South Today.
This year's wine harvest is in full swing, with pickers and machines gathering grapes as they ripen. And growers look likely to harvest all of their fruit despite concerns expressed earlier regarding a labour shortage.
This year's Central Otago wine harvest is set to be a success. There had been concern about potential labour shortages this season due to closed borders. However, most vineyards have now been able to find enough workers. In some cases, that's meant vineyard owners calling in favours from friends and family to lend a hand for what's proving to be a bumper crop. Aside from the human pickers, Mount Dunstan Estates has this labour-saving machine harvester. Vineyard crew member Howard Marshall says it can pick the same as about 50 workers would achieve by hand.
2 people, got the harvester driver and a gondola driver, and you can pick 45 tonne a day with 2 people.
The picker works by shaking the vines, but isn't very selective with the quality of grapes it harvests.
If you're wanting to produce a top quality wine, then you need, it's better to hand pick.
One person who'd agree is Grasshopper Rock's manager Phil Handford. He's helping his pickers get the very best out of their Pinot Noir grapes, as they've done every season for the last 16 years.
Hand picking, we can get the clean fruit we want. Like this year is particularly clean. You could probably machine harvest this year, but it's getting that year on year, that consistent results. And this vineyard's set up for hand harvesting.
And while the drought and low lake levels have been of concern to some in the region, the dry spell is proving a boon for the wine harvest.
I think everyone's pretty happy with this year. There's good yields because there was good flowering, and certainly the last 30 days with no rain, Melbourne will be very envious. Has been a big factor in lovely clean fruit and no disease.
Central Otago's microclimates have meant some grapes are not yet ready to pick, with those growers watching the weather closely with frosts forecast for this week. In Central Otago, the South Today.
A crop of medicinal cannabis growing in a field near Gore has exceeded expectations for the company behind the trial planting. The flowers from the harvest are set to be turned into a range of therapeutic health products obtainable with a doctor's prescription.
Medicinal cannabis growing outdoors in Southland. This hectare-sized plot near Gore is one of 4 trial plantings by Mataura-based company Southern Medicinal, which has set up a hemp propagating and manufacturing business in the town's former paper mill. Managing Director Greg Marshall says while the area has faced drought and the plants have been lashed by strong winds, the crop has performed above expectations.
I'm really pleased to say that the plants have grown incredibly well, and we've now actually, despite all the headwinds, looks like we're exceeding our initial targets.
While this strain of plant doesn't have the psychoactive compound THC that can make you high, the flowers do contain a chemical called CBD or cannabidiol. This is used in therapeutic medical products and can now be obtained with a doctor's prescription. Marshall says the business didn't receive licensing for the medicinal plants until late in the season, but he says that hasn't affected the success of the crop.
So we've planted these plants at late December, in late January and early February. So in essence, some of these plants have had sort of 60 to 70 days in the ground, and they've over that period outgrown absolutely everything else on the farm.
Once the company gets into full production, it's aiming to grow 1 million cannabis plants in Southland each year. The company's also aiming for little waste. After the flowers are extracted from the plants, the leaves and stems will be processed into an experimental animal feed.
We're turning it into dry animal pellets, and we're feeding that to sheep in a trial at Lincoln College this year.
Marshall says early indications suggest the feed made from cannabis plants could reduce an animal's methane emissions by 25%. In Gore, the South Today.
Still to come after the break on this edition of Southern Newsweek, students clean up Dunedin's streets and a champion driver wins the Otago Rally for the 9th time. Tēnā koe, welcome back. The Otago University Students Association held its annual street clean-up recently in memory of student Sophia Cristani, who died during a student party 3 years ago. But with the charred remains of couches among the trash being hauled away, it appears lessons are still to be learnt by those in the student quarter.
Student couch fires are still very much a part of North Dunedin. Friday's student clean-up, held in memory of student Sophia Cristani, who died during a flat party in 2019, saw a large group including students and other members of the community tidying up areas close to campus. Deputy Vice-Chancellor Helen Nicholson says Otago University is trying to encourage better student behaviour, but old habits are hard to change.
I don't know that it's obviously different, and I mean that's something that we're trying to think creatively as to how we can make a difference and can we improve the design of the street so that students and others feel that they need to keep it clean and tidy.
Sophia Cristani's mother, Elspeth McMillan, was upset with student behaviour at this year's St Patrick's Day events and spoke out at the time. Dunedin's Mayor Aaron Hawkins was among those pitching in on Friday. He believes students get a bit of bad press, but says events like this can help.
Certainly there have been people that Campus Watch have recognised that are here as active participants, and so I think again that shows that it's not quite as cut and dry as it may appear.
Members of Dunedin Police also assisted student volunteers in doing their part to clean up the area.
I think a lot of the residents that are on Castle and Leith came because it's a pretty good initiative for what we live in, so to clean it up is pretty good.
People will walk down here and just it kind of looks like a tip most of the time, so it's kind of good that everyone's getting involved and everyone's doing their bit to help out.
The university, police and city council have been talking with the owners of nearby alcohol retailers, with the aim of taking glass bottles out of the equation and off the streets of North Dunedin. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Queenstown conservation groups have just finished installing what's believed to be the highest trapping line in the country. The extension through the forest at Wye Creek is aimed at protecting the area's biodiversity and the native wildlife.
Trapping pests up high. This trapping line installed at Wye Creek near Queenstown is in the running to be the highest trapping line in New Zealand. Local conservation groups have worked with DOC to extend the trapping line by 7 kilometres. The aim is to trap pests in the local area and protect native wildlife. Bonnie Wilkins works for Southern Lakes Sanctuary, which is trying to protect the biodiversity in the Southern Lakes region. Wilkins says the trap line here has already had a hugely positive impact on the area's wildlife.
So this trap line has been in for quite a while now, and we've already seen such an increase in the biodiversity up here and the bird life, which is really exciting. Some species coming back that we haven't seen up here before, so yeah, it's going really well.
The conservation effort is run by volunteers who are keen to get out and set traps, helping local bird life to flourish. The Queenstown Climbing Club began constructing wooden traps last year, with the help of Arrowtown Men's Shed, producing enough traps to begin installation last October.
So the Queenstown Climbing Club pretty much does all of the work up here now. So most of the trap lines in the area are all run by volunteers. So yeah, just sort of started with a couple of passionate people that were keen to get rid of the pests and have the bird life come back into the area.
The volunteers believe the work will mean a brighter future for Wye Creek, with fewer pests and more room for wildlife to flourish. In Queenstown, the South Today.
Proving he is nigh on unbeatable, Hayden Paddon extended his record-breaking victory tally to 9 at last weekend's Otago Rally. Despite a fresh onslaught of newer, faster and more purpose-built rally cars entered in the New Zealand Rally Championships season opener, Paddon was once again pure class.
Former WRC driver Hayden Paddon got this year's rally season off to a flying start at the Otago Rally over the weekend. It's the season opener for the New Zealand Rally Championship. The region turned on fine, sunny conditions for both days of racing, with Paddon topping the podium after finishing more than 5 seconds clear of second-place driver Ben Hunt.
A traditional start of the New Zealand Rally Championship, but just the whole atmosphere here in Dunedin, the locals come out and support the rally. Some of the best stages in the world, really a big variety of different stages between both days, and it's just a real sort of challenge for the competitors, so yeah, definitely a favourite.
Paddon's Hyundai was followed by 2 Skodas in second and third, the bronze going to Aucklander Rana Horan. Dunedin Rally driver Emma Gilmore was looking on track for a podium finish, but incurred a time penalty after her crew was forced to change brake calipers on Sunday.
We had a great weekend. We ended up finishing 5th overall, which is a good result. It's our best result here with the Suzuki. We had a minute of penalties just through some mechanical problems that we had, which meant we didn't quite get onto the podium. We would have been on the podium without the minute penalties. So, yeah, bittersweet. Great to be at the finish, but it would have been nice to have been spraying some champagne.
Otago rower and cyclist Hamish was one of the guest drivers for this year's rally. He's used to racing at the highest level on the water or on two wheels, but says competing in an off-road rally had really been an ambition for him.
Doing something like this is on a lot of people's bucket list, but getting it from the bucket list to the do list is quite something different. So to have that opportunity, it's something that I'll always remember.
In the classic car rally, D1 NZ drifting champion Fanger Dan Woolhouse placed in the top 10. Event organisers say the sport is firing on all cylinders, with this year's Rally New Zealand also part of the World Rally Championship, helping to attract a solid international field. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Young apprentices from across the regions spent half of last weekend competing to build the best park bench. The builders were all vying for a spot in the Apprentice of the Year finals, which will be held later this year. In Central Otago, the competition was so close that judges had to recheck the points awarded before declaring their regional winner.
Using their skills to build a comfortable wooden seat, young building apprentices spent Saturday showing off their craft as they worked to construct a park bench from provided plans. The day-long challenge was one of 20 throughout the country. The 4 young builders had their tools out at the Central Otago heat with a prize of $500 and a chance to compete at the national finals in Hamilton.
The winner from today will end up coming up to our national conference, which was supposed to be in May, but it's now delayed till November. But they'll come up there and compete against apprentices from all around the country.
New Zealand Certified Builders Central Otago President Andy McRae says competitions such as this encourage apprentices to get out of their comfort zone and discover what they're capable of.
We really believe that apprentices are the future, and it's important to nourish them and give them chances to sort of push themselves and stick their head above the parapet and give it a chance.
The Central Otago Regional Heat was won by Wanaka apprentice Tai Sargison. However, the quality of workmanship between the competitors was so close that judges had to recount the points they'd awarded to make sure who had won.
We had some stiff competition. We actually had to have a bit of a recount amongst the judges just to make sure our maths was right, So, they all did very well.
Young builders from across the country tackled the same challenge, with Jack Johnston winning the Dunedin heat. All of the park benches created by the apprentices are set to be auctioned online, with proceeds going to the Cancer Society. In Wanaka, the South Today.
Still to come after the break on this edition of Southern Newsweek, a landscaper's mud pollutes a Wanaka creek, and new mountain bike tracks are being built near Clutha. Tanakwe, welcome back. Queenstown Lakes District Mayor Jim Bolt announced on Wednesday that he would not seek re-election. The 70-year-old says after 2 terms in office, it's now time to move on.
Jim Bolt has led the Queenstown Lakes District for the last 5.5 years, through some of its toughest times with the loss of tourists and businesses. This afternoon, he announced he wouldn't be standing again for the position of mayor at this year's local body elections in October. He says it was a decision that wasn't made lightly, but Bolt believes the time is right for his time as mayor to come to an end.
My family and I have been talking about it since Christmas, New Year. Gone either way on it over that period, but I am of the view that good leaders recognise when it's time for them to go, and it's time for me to go.
Bolt says he's honoured to have served the Queenstown Lakes District as mayor, and is proud and humbled by what his council has achieved. He admits it's been a particularly rough last 2 years, but a marvellous 2 terms. He can look back on many high points, including how the region grappled with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Last night, and I got up to something like 30 high points, so I'm not going to list all those off, but In particular, I'm very proud of the way council and the district handled the fallout immediately after COVID-19.
Bolt will continue working hard for the region until he hands over the mayoral chains, following elections in October. Going forward, he plans to increase his presence and involvement with various not-for-profit groups, including his work as life member of the Child Cancer Foundation. In Queenstown, the South Today.
The Deputy Mayor of the Queenstown Lakes District is demanding action after silt ran off into Wanaka's Bullock Creek. Callum McLeod says the local creek was clouded with mud after recent rain created runoff from a landscaping project.
Turned into a muddy torrent. The normally clear-running spring-fed waters of Wanaka's Bullock Creek were filled with silt after a recent rainfall. The origin of the silt is a property being landscaped in Younghall Street. Yesterday, Deputy Mayor Callum McLeod demanded action, saying, "This is once again us failing to do our job. Where are QLDC's enforcement team?" According to Otago Fish and Game Officer Paul Van Klink, who has worked for years on restoring the Bullock Creek wetland, it's not the first time that earthworks have muddied the iconic stream. Van Klink says, unfortunately, QLDC is treating Bullock Creek like a developer's stormwater drain. A Queenstown Lakes District Council investigation is underway, but it is too soon to know if the property owner will face any action about their landscaping efforts. In Wanaka, the South Today.
A new mountain bike park is taking shape near Clutha. Inspired by the dream of two school-aged riders, the project has seen the community donating time and machinery to help build the tracks.
A new downhill mountain biking track within easy distance of Clutha. This track along the highway to Kaitangata was the brainchild of two young riders, Connor Bond and Jack Buckingham. The ambitious pair made a submission to the Clutha District Council late last year about their dream of creating a new mountain bike park for the community.
So one of the people at council knew about this land and they asked us if it was good, and we agreed, so then
They say the 5-hectare site is ideal for a mountain bike course with tracks giving riders up to 45 metres of descent. Chris Till from the South Otago Mountain Bike Club has helped get the project off the ground and is looking forward to see the weed-infested land become a beautiful park with native trees.
In collaboration with the local community, particularly with some of the kindergarten schools who will be coming here, planting at the age of 5 or 6, they'll then see those trees grow. It will become like a park to them, and then hopefully over time that'll kindle an interest in mountain biking.
The site is owned by the local council, and Community Development Advisor Jean Proctor says a number of businesses have been very generous in supporting the development.
It's the most perfect, absolute perfect thing to be happening in the community of Clutha, and people are just clamouring to come on board and support it.
Regular Thursday dig nights have been attracting about 20 hardy volunteers, all swinging shovels. And Connor and Jack are very grateful to all the workers, businesses and organisations that have helped their mountain bike dream become a reality.
I would like also thank council and everyone who's helped on the dig nights. It's been amazing and we really appreciate it.
Up to 5 downhill tracks are planned for the site, ranging from novice to experienced riders, along with a special jumps track for advanced riders who want to attain big air. In Clutha, the South Today.
A sculpture that fell victim to the rebuild of Christchurch Airport's terminal building more than a decade ago is flying high again. The large artwork was commissioned to mark the historic 1953 London to Christchurch air race. It's now been restored and will take pride of place in Christchurch's Ferrymead Heritage Park.
Flying high once more. Safe from the scrap heap, this rare piece of aviation history has been restored by volunteers at the Ferrymead Aeronautical Society. Back in 1953, Christchurch Airport was the finish line for the last great air race. The event saw civil and military aircraft start at London's Heathrow Airport, racing each other halfway across the world. This sculpture by local artist Russell Clark was gifted to the airport by the Air Race Council and hung in the main terminal building for 50 years. Discarded following demolition and rebuild work in 2007, it was later spotted languishing in a maintenance yard by an airport worker.
he's an enthusiast about the air race, and he determined that it should actually be saved. So he thought, where can it go? And he then approached us, and he subsequently became a member so that he could steward this project through to its completion.
After discussions with the airport, the artwork was formally presented to the Aeronautical Society.
We as a society have a connection with it because we have one of the old Vickers Viscount aircraft that NAC used, and it was in fact a Viscount that was the first passenger aircraft across the line at the end of the air race. So it ties in nicely with our other exhibits.
The event in 1953 was huge. Tens of thousands of Cantabrians gathered at the airport to watch what was billed as the last and longest of the world's great international air races.
Well, it's a peculiar piece in a certain sense. It has only a limited audience in this modern age.
The Society hopes to have a themed display set up in time for next year's 70th anniversary of the Great Air Race. In Ferrymead, the South Today.
And that wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news and videos from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz. And you can follow Channel 39 on YouTube to catch our news bulletins on demand. Nō reira, kia pai te po, ka kite anō.
Public interest journalism funded through New Zealand On Air.